A new report shows that the number of Christians killed for their faith doubled in the last year, more than 2,100 compared with just over 1,200 the previous year. And although Muslim countries make up the bulk of the list where Christians are persecuted, the communist country of North Korea is number one for the 12th straight year. And the report was released by the Christian watch group Open Doors. David Curry is the president of Open Doors, and he joins me now from Washington, D.C. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much.
So why is North Korea on the top of the list for the last 12 years?
Well, I think everybody knows that North Korea is a very strange country indeed. What people don't understand is how dangerous it is to be a Christian in North Korea, to identify yourself as somebody who wants to read the Bible, who wants to make choices about your own faith. That's a very dangerous thing in North Korea. And for the last 12 years, it's been ranked the top of the list of the most dangerous places here on earth to be a believer.
What is life like in Korea if you're a Christian?
Well, certainly, if you're a Christian in North Korea, you need to be a secret believer, is what we would call it, where you can't read your Bible in the open. It's very dangerous to identify yourself as a Christian. We believe and we know that there's at least 50,000 Christians in concentration camps today in North Korea. And considering that today is Kim Jong-un's birthday and old retired basketball players are over there celebrating his birthday, it's a very strange contrast indeed, considering that tens of thousands of people who are in prison for their faith.
In comparison, though, to the things we hear about in, let's say, areas of Pakistan and Somalia and, areas of other Middle Eastern countries, we don't hear as much coming out of North Korea, and that's why it strikes us as a little bit strange that North Korea would be number one above all these other Middle Eastern countries that we hear such horror stories about persecution.
And the reason why you don't hear a lot about what's happening to Christians in North Korea is because the control is so total. In some countries, there's some freedoms, and the violence against Christians is noted in the news media. When you have a bombing in Pakistan, it's a very dangerous place to identify yourself as a Christian, certainly. But you do hear about it. Here in North Korea, the control is total. You're not allowed to carry Bibles. There isn't exposure to the kinds of persecutions and real horrors that are happening to Christians. The reports that we're getting out that have been identified and confirmed by the UN about what's happening to Christians, the kinds of tortures that happen to them in these concentration camps, is absolutely inhumane.
What makes Christianity so feared, I guess, among the leaders of North Korea?
Well, I think what you have there is a quasi-Stalinistic regime. It's sort of reminiscent of 50 years ago in the Eastern Bloc countries where they want to limit personal freedoms. Christianity has a sense of being involved with personal freedom and as part of its theology. But I also think there's a weird theocracy that's been developed over 3 generations there in North Korea that is especially fearful of any sort of spirituality or personal faith that would run contrary to the fact that Kim Jong-un, his father and his grandfather, consider themselves God. So I think that idea, those two philosophies are in direct contrast.
So worshiping of Jesus is in direct conflict with worshiping of your dear leader, I guess, then.
That's right.
Just to affirm that statement made right there, right here's a news article from a North Korean defector. She grew up in North Korea. Her name is Yeonmi Park, and I'll show a video from her specifically right here in just a second. But right now, let's read this headline. North Korean children were told how Kim Jong-un is a god who can read their thoughts. North Korean defector Yeonmi Park has spoken of her childhood in the Hermit Kingdom. It's called that because it's so closed off from the rest of the world. That's intentional. But she was told during her childhood where children are forced to take classes where they criticize and attack each other. It's kind of strange, isn't it? The article goes on, a North Korean defector has detailed the depths of the country's propaganda machine, which tells children its supreme leader can read their minds. Yeonmi Park grew up in the Hermit Kingdom, where the concepts of love and friendship do not exist. At least according to its ultra-strict education system, feelings of adoration are to be directed at the supreme leader alone. Park's parents never told her they loved her. A similar situation to many of her countryfolk who were used to seeing scores of people starve to death in the streets. And the reason why I gather that the students are taught to criticize one another is to not get really too close to anyone. You're supposed to have this suspicion and only look to the government. And I thought to myself while researching North Korea about how it's the perfect type of the Antichrist world order on a very small scale. Because just as this CBN news article details, it's been widely assumed North Korea is so deadly and dangerous for Christians and other religious believers because it's godless. But actually, the opposite is true. North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un is worshipped as a god there, and an entire religion is built around idolizing the Kim dynasty.
I didn't actually really knew what religion was. And when I was before my escape around 2007, I was keep hearing this news, and like our towns keep talking about somebody got executed for having a Bible. No, it wasn't even a Bible. They told me like it was some kind of book that wasn't supposed to be read. And I was like 13 years old. I was wondering why would anyone have that kind of book? But also I thought, what possibly that book could be, how threatening that could be, they have to kill that person. And turns out it was actually Bible. So owning a Bible in North Korea gets your life. And North Korea, of course, it goes viciously after Christianity because they cannot face that reality, how resembling Christianity and North Korean regime's propaganda is. So the first Kim, the Kim Il-sung, his mother and father was a very devout Christians. So Pyongyang, it was used to be like the hub of the Christian. It was a very flourishing region in North Korea. A lot of people in Pyongyang were Christians. So when Kim Il-sung came into power, he was very clever. He knew how to manipulate people, how to make people to believe in something impossible like God. So he basically copied the Bible. Right? This is the reason why I was keep telling people, if you try to understand North Korea as a normal country, you will never, because it's a religious cult. So Kim said to North Korean people and wrote a lot of things like resembling to Bible, a lot of verses that North Korean people have to live by and memorize, saying, like he is a God who loved us so much, gave us his son, like which was Kim Jong-il, equivalent to Jesus Christ. His body died, but his spirit is with us forever. Who knows how many hairs in my hair? He knows what I'm thinking, everything he knows.
Now, is this Kim any better for Christians than his father or his grandfather? Things changed?
Not at all. In fact, Gary, the early signs are that Kim Jong-un is moving towards a deification of his person at a much faster rate than Kim Jong-il.
And what are some of the things that Christians are facing now compared to maybe several years ago?
It is illegal to do any kind of a Christian activity, whether that be to possess a Bible, even something more basic like bowing your head. So I think the greatest misconception, Gary, is that Christian activity is stopped in North Korea. The truth is that for the last 60 years, Christians have been on the advance in North Korea. Although the numbers remain small, they are growing. And no matter how many Christians North Korea puts to death or puts in concentration camps, we still continue to see the spread of the faith in this most closed country.
As one can tell on this world map about how secluded North Korea truly is, it's sandwiched in between that of South Korea and China. Right here, North Korea, as you'll see, Israel, way on over here, Africa, the continent, and then way on over here by its lonesome. Now, many may view North Korea as a communist state. It's truly not. Right here's a portrait of Karl Marx on the wall of the Ministry of Foreign Trade in North Korea. But communism has been phased out in North Korean politics and replaced with Juche. Now, this is very important because it's basically the national philosophy of North Korea. Juche incorporates the historical materialist ideas of Marxism, Leninism, but also strongly emphasizes the individual, the nation state, and national sovereignty. Juche posits that a country will prosper once it has become self-reliant by achieving political, economic, and military independence, and that includes independence from any higher power or any power of the earth. Once that the Kim dynasty really took hold in the 1970s, loyalty to the leader was increasingly emphasized as an essential part of Juche. Juche has been variously described by critics as a quasi-religion, a nationalist ideology, and a deviation from Marxism-Leninism. Now, someone may try to point out to you that there is religious freedom within the Constitution of North Korea, but in reality, it couldn't be further from the truth. Right here is from our own, the United States analysis of it. The North Korean Constitution nominally grants freedom of religious belief, but it also prohibits the use of religion for, and I quote, drawing in forces or for harming the state. Anyone caught practicing religion or even suspected of harboring religious views in private is subject to severe punishment, including arrest, torture, imprisonment, and execution. So restrictive is this nation of North Korea that its citizens usually cannot freely travel around the country itself, let alone travel abroad. And as was already noted from the opening news broadcast, North Korea always usually ranks within the top 3 of the hardest places in the world to be a Christian. But North Korea is not the worst place to be a Christian. Afghanistan, most recently, ranked above North Korea. Christians are persecuted worldwide, but some not so harshly. Where Christians face the most violence is not North Korea. Lord willing, we're going to be coming to these others. North Korea doesn't even rank in the top 10 as far as this goes, Nigeria being number 1. Now, as for the year 2021, where Christians were martyred most, once again, Nigeria is way number 1. Nigeria with, as far as we know, according to Open Doors reporting, Nigeria, 4,650 Christians were killed just for being Christians in Nigeria, almost 5,000. Pakistan ranks way behind and number 2 with 620. 4,000 more in Nigeria. Once again, North Korea does not even rank in the top 10. And once again, for our last stats, where churches were attacked or closed most, well, that's Nigeria. No, it's not. China has a way ahead lead at number 1 with 3,000 churches were attacked or closed most. They're the most notorious for shutting down churches. So as we see, North Korea is not even ranked in the top 10 right here. Christian persecution is worldwide. But just as the case with the early church, no stopping church growth in North Korea despite 70 years of Christian persecution. The church, on the contrary, grows. Now, it's one thing to hear about the persecution happening, but this article goes on to detail what is happening in these other countries. Prisoners are forced to carry out long days of hard labor, such as mining and logging. Malnutrition is rife due to the poor rations and increases the mortality rate, people dying. Prisoners live in poor accommodation that does not provide adequate protection against the tough winters, further damaging their health, and are subject to brutal treatment, torture, and even execution by prison guards. Now, according to my estimation, this is the reason for the distinction between that of Nigeria and North Korea. Nigeria, they'll just kill you, whereas North Korea, they'll enslave you and force you into hard labor. And yet, in spite of all this, Christians remain. In fact, their community is growing. The article notes that since 1995, the North Korean government has allowed about 480 foreign organizations to work in the country, and 70 of these are Christian, including Samaritan's Purse and World Vision. Which does quickly bring me to the topic at hand, and that is, I would encourage you all, just as I've done even before recording this very video about an hour ago, I gave to one of these organizations. I'll even say it was Open Doors. I gave to Open Doors. And I would encourage you all, if you're looking for a place to give, then I would most certainly recommend to you Open Doors Ministry, Samaritan's Purse, all of these, Salvation Army, St. Jude's, Compassion International. If you desire to Google them, you can Google them and find them very easily, any of these. But I also do have a link on my website. It's at the new donate page, and I have these 5 listed. We personally take no money for any of this. As you can read their mission statement right under line, I briefly summarized it. Open Doors Ministry, helping the persecuted church, and so on and so on. So you can give specifically to these, and no money comes into my ministry. I'm not affiliated with any of these. It's even noted at the very top. It's just, I believe that it's time to start trying to help these in harder conditions than ourselves. Perhaps one of the many reasons why you and I have been so blessed is to send help to these other Christians worldwide. Open Doors USA once again reported how before 1945, there was approximately 500,000 Christians in North Korea out of the some 26 million today. 10 years later, There was no visible evidence of their existence. It was quickly shut down, Christianity, after 1945. But today, Open Doors estimates that there are some 300,000 Christians professing their faith in secret. But I'd now like to close this video out with a story that I read, and this is really what prompted me to begin this little series that I'm going to be endeavoring with, Lord willing, for the next few weeks, telling about the persecution worldwide. And I have this book, Jesus Freaks, and it's about Christian martyrs. And that's what they refer to us as. It's one of the pejoratives that they send our way. But I read a story within this book, a very true and short story that I'm about to read to you all right now. It's very short, but I'll never forget what it says. For years, Pastor Kim and 27 of his flock of North Korean saints had lived in hand-dug tunnels beneath the earth. Then, as the communists were building a road, they discovered the Christians living underground. The officials brought them out before a crowd of 30,000 in the village of Goksan for a public trial and execution. Now remember, this is Pastor Kim and his congregation of 27 other hiding Christians. They were told, "Deny Christ or you will die," but they refused. At this point, the head communist officer ordered 4 children from the group seized and had them prepared for hanging. With ropes tied around their small necks, the officer again commanded the parents to deny Christ. Not one of the believers would deny their faith. They told the children, "We will soon see you in heaven." The children died quietly. The officer then called for a steamroller to be brought in. He forced the Christians to lie on the ground in its path. As its engine revved, they were given one last chance to recant their faith in Jesus. Again, they refused. As the steamroller began to inch forward, the Christians began to sing a song they had often sung together. As their bones and bodies were crushed under the pressure of the massive rollers, they continued singing. The execution was reported in the North Korean press as an act of suppressing superstition.